Hello viewers, welcome to an Anakazi Online Conversation. My name is Helen Lubamba, Head of Corporate and Investment Banking at Stanbic Bank Zambia. Today's conversation is to mark and commemorate a special day, International Women's Day. And this year, the global theme for International Women's Day is Choose to Challenge. Choose to challenge the norms, choose to challenge the expectations, choose to challenge the expectations of what women's limitations are supposed to be in society. Over the last few decades, we've seen women's advancements come a long way. Just over the last year, across the pond, we saw the first female vice president elected into office in the United States, as well as the first black person elected to that position. But closer to home, we have our own superheroes. And today, I have the honor of having a conversation with Mrs. Cecilia Zimba, President of Zambia Institute of Chartered Accountants. We know Cecilia Zimba as the first female elected president of Zambia Institute of Chartered Accountants, ZICA, as well as the first female vice president of ZICA. In addition to that, Cecilia also sits on the board of Zambia Revenue Authorities as the vice chair, and she also sits on various other boards in both the public and private sector. Cecilia has over 20 years experience as a chartered accountant and has worked in various areas of the economy. And I'm meeting here not only a recognized and accomplished chartered accountant, but also a mother, a grandmother, a wife, and a woman who is very much dedicated to the entrepreneurial sector, particularly those pertaining to women. And she's also, I'm glad to add that she's also spearheads some of the advancements in village banking. Cecilia is passionate about entrepreneurship, particularly around women's business ventures. She's a strong advocate for village banking initiatives, and we're proud to say and honored that she also participates in the Anakazi village banking initiatives. Welcome, Cecilia.
Thank you very much, Helen.
It's great to have you here.
It feels good to be back here
and
today.
Happy International Women's Day.
Thank you, and same to you.
In your own words, just tell us what your view is around financial freedom and what does it mean to you?
Well, Helen, I would say that financial freedom means different things to different people. But to me, I would say that financial freedom is having the ability to control your finances and also not having cash flows that stress you. So if I have cash flows that enable me to lead the life that I want to live, I have that financial freedom. I'm not worried about debts that I need to pay. I'm able to pay my bills when they fall due, and I'm not worried about unexpected expenditure. So to me, that is what financial freedom is, having that ability to even invest my resources in long-term investments, looking forward to the day that I'll sit back and say, I'm in retirement, and now the money that I was working for, especially when I had the energy, is now working for me. So I have that financial freedom.
Especially in these difficult times, because I can imagine a lot of people are going through hardships, and especially in these difficult times.
Sure.
What is your view in terms of how you feel that preparedness comes into play, particularly when we're faced in times that we don't anticipate?
Yeah, preparing for one's future, especially now with very uncertain times, is very, very difficult. You might think that what I've set aside is adequate to cover you for those times when you probably will not have a job or you not have the ability to generate the cash flows that you've been able to generate. But what is important is to remain focused and having to know that in life you may have so many things that you want, but it's not everything that you want that you need. So you start to focus on those things that are important and placing your resources on those needs that you can't do without. We need to start differentiating between what we want and what we need. Anything that is just something that you want, you start to lay low on that and focus on that which really is a necessity, and taking a day at a time. Yeah.
I mean, despite all the advancements we can talk about in terms of women's advancements in society, there's still a large section of our populations globally that still rely on the male partner to support the home, and with the younger generation, we're raising our children differently. Most of us who have the opportunity to do so, but we still find that women still, there's still a long way to go in terms of being totally financially free, and a lot of that has to do with financial literacy. So how do you think we will make a difference in that, or do you think we are on the right track right now?
Well, I would say we are on the right track. As you say, Helen, the generation that we're bringing up today is not the same as the generation that was there before. I know for a fact, I'll give an example of my own mother. She was a professional teacher, and at the time that she started having us, the children, my dad felt that it was more important for her to stay home and be a full-time mother taking care of the children. My father had the means to look after the family. So here is a woman who has her own career, but she has to stop everything that she's doing and depend on her husband's income. It might have been easy in those days because I think there was a lifestyle that was not as advanced as it is today. So one salary would probably be enough to cater for all the children, and the families were quite big. It's not like what we have now where you have 1, 2 children. I come from a family of 15, and I think it was a good decision that my mom had to take off from her career and look after all her 15 children who are healthy. So in the times that we are in right now, I think the demands are quite high. You cannot survive on one pay. You need extra income. Even when you are working, you find that there's a lot of other things that people need to do in order to supplement their regular income. So I think that we are on the right track because we are teaching our children not to focus so much on gender. I think what is important is to raise a child as a human being. Doesn't matter whether they are male or they are female, but teaching them life skills that empowers them. They should be able to stand on their own feet. And for the women that still believe, there are quite some few women out there who believe that a man should look after them. I think those days are gone. Now it's about working in collaboration. I think we are better together. As a spouse, if you have a skill, if you are able to do 1 or 2 business ventures, you need to support your spouse. It doesn't mean that if a man can provide, then you should just sit back. I think there are always those days that you may not be able to project because there's so much uncertainty. So my encouragement to all the women out there is do something for yourself and be financially independent.
And that brings us to the discussion around village banking. And I'm sure even in our mother's days, that concept probably was started, the seed started from back then.
The chilimba.
Yes, chilimba. But now we're seeing it really grown into a full-grown cottage industry, which will probably even go beyond those boundaries that we've put around it. But what can you tell me in terms of your experience around village banking and what it means for financial inclusion, particularly for women?
Okay, the concept of village banking, I got introduced to village banking. I actually prefer calling it group savings. Okay. I don't like the name village banking, but anyhow, it's well understood when you explain it as village banking. So I got introduced to this concept more than 13 years ago. And it was a group of friends who were coming from the diaspora, mainly from South Africa and Botswana, who brought the concept, because I think in those two countries it was well received. They call it, I think, Miselo in Botswana, and in South Africa it's commonly referred to as Stockville. So we would come together as friends, just friends, not anybody from the streets, but friends and sisters who wanted to hang out. So every month we would meet the last Saturday, I think, or is it the second Saturday of the month. We agreed on how much we needed to save and how much money we needed to borrow, how much you would qualify to borrow, and at the end of the year would share that money. And it was a good socialization as well, because every time we are busy, either you're at work, if you're not at work, maybe at church. If you're not at church, you're back at work, and that kind of life cycle, which doesn't give you much time to socialize. So we would have a meal and would just make merry and just be friends and share lots and lots of ideas. So it's something that you'd always look forward to. But as years went by, we saw that more and more people started doing this, and commonly referred to as village banking. And it's a very good thing, for it has brought a platform that enables a lot of women access those financial services that ordinarily they would not be able to access. I think you said in the earlier introduction that we have quite a number of people that are still like unbanked. They don't have access to financial services. And for me, financial inclusion is about having everybody have access to some financial services at an affordable rate. It doesn't have to be financial services which are so costly that they're not able to sustain the costs. But what we see now is that through village banking, there's more or less like a platform where there's a bit of financial inclusion. People are able to save, because the idea is you bring your money, you save, and you earn interest at the end of it all. And also for those who want to access small loans or big loans, they're able to get into a village bank and be able to access those services. And at the end of the day, they are having some empowerment of some sort. So I can see that the advent of village banking has also, in its own way, brought financial inclusion, because in a very special way, or in a very unique way, we have so many people being able to save money, even to get financial literacy from these same groups that they go to. A long time, it was very rare to find even a financial institution like Stanbic offer a Chilimba account. But now we see more and more financial service providers providing these products, which enables village banking to go on smoothly. Yeah, so I can say that financial inclusion is becoming more and more with the advent of village banking. Yeah.
And when I think about the progression for, particularly in the rural societies, where Chilimba starts and where you can have an overlay of financial literacy, it also leads to better credit worthiness and ability to get into the formal banking system, which again then helps with the inclusion piece. Because I think globally the figures for in the developing world for women who for adult women is about 46% that have been able to make it into the formal sector. So in your view, do you see that transition between, particularly in the informal sector, making that transition from the informal to the formal, and whether we can see that that sort of development is happening here in Zambia?
Yeah, we need to actually promote it. I think one of the things that makes village banking not to be so successful is the informal kind of like structure that it takes. So in some cases, there've been quite some unpleasant incidences where you find somebody has run away with savings of other members, or you find that there was irresponsible lending, or there was irresponsible borrowing. Because I know that there are certain groups that would have so much money, but because everybody is looking forward to that day when they'll be able to get their payout, and their payout must have interest, they start forcing loans on members, and that in itself is a big problem. So you find a member will get that money without really having proper plans for it, and then when it comes to paying back, they're not able to pay. And then these are unsecured loans in most cases. It's only through experience that certain groups, especially those that deal with large sums, would say, we want some form of security. If you're getting more than this amount, we'll ask you to give us either a title for your property, or give us your vehicle registration, or something like that. Yeah, but I think that there needs to be a push to try and encourage, especially the women that are very much into village banking, to kind of like formalize their village banking activities, because it helps to also secure their resources. But I know that the levels of literacy, of course, are different. Maybe those women that are in rural areas may not have that skill of having people that are able to even prepare monthly, reports in a format that everybody can follow. So there's a lot of informal practices, and that in itself presents its own challenges. And as the groups grow and the funds grow, you can't just have a very manual system. You need to have some form of automation or some reporting of some kind that makes it easy to follow through what is happening in a particular group.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad you touched on briefly some of the downsides of village banking, but clearly there's more value and more upsides to and the benefits of village banking. I'd like you to share some of those values, what you see as the values coming out of it, and also perhaps from the security perspective, which you've just spoken about. If you can talk about how digitalization comes to help in that aspect.
Clearly, the values that I've seen in village banking is that of empowerment. I think you will agree with me that until recently, it wasn't very, very easy for most people to access financial services. That's one. And even just to access, say, financial products like loans. So you find that the members that belong to a village bank find it very easy to go and borrow and to go and save, which makes it very easy for them. But at the end of it all, you'll find that certain challenges are there because they don't have supporting systems. Like you could have a member who is situated in a remote place. They need to access funds, and I think right now our country is more or less like on a digital network that covers the entire country. I don't think there's any part of the country that has not got some form of network. So with the coming in of mobile network operators, you can transact through the MNOs, whereby you're using the mobile money platforms, and even the banks themselves have got the e-wallets that members can access without necessarily having to go into a physical brick and mortar building. There are so many agents, which is also a way of empowering the members of the public that are having these little kiosks where they're giving some banking services of some kind. I've seen vendors who would be able to get a client to access money from various banks using certain gadgets like I've heard of the Kazang. There are such kind of like products which or services which make it possible for a client to draw money. So the digital platform really has to be utilized to its fullest, because even when we look at what is happening now, where we're being encouraged to stay home and our life has just changed. We're no longer social people. We stay, you keep your own space and you stay, home. You are encouraged to stay home, restrict your movements, because we know that this virus only is transferred when you move. If you are staying at home, the chances of it being transmitted to another person are kind of like limited. So we need to go digital. And it's pleasing to see that we have more and more opportunities or avenues that can be used to support the lifestyle that we have to lead now. Just this afternoon this morning I should say, I was attending a virtual taxation workshop that was organized by Zika, and at the same time I had business transactions that I needed to do. I was so happy that sitting right in front of my computer, I'm listening into this conversation, and at the same time I'm transacting, because the bank has made it possible for me to just log into their network and be able to make a payment to a vendor who is supposed to supply me some feed for my chickens. And all I needed to do was just send a proof of payment, and I did that through my phone. I didn't move an inch, and there was, after doing that, I called some transporter and said, look, I need to move this feed from this point to this point. Can you do it? And he says, yeah. He went there. I didn't have to get out, go give him cash. I just used the mobile network. So there it is, my life made simple, just by the digital, services that are available. So the digital transformation, there is nothing that we can do about it. We need to embrace it.
Far more reaching than brick and mortar.
Exactly.
I mean, personally, I look forward to the time when all this is behind us, because as human beings, we are social creatures, and that aspect, missing that aspect of our lives has a big impact. But at the same time, one of the benefits that has come out of this is to accelerate the utilization of digital channels, and particularly partnerships like you've mentioned with mobile network operators. So and it helps to resolve some of the challenges that we have in the rural areas.
In addition, you will find that the digital platforms have also given, like village banks, an opportunity to have a record, because if you are doing your transactions online, you've got a trail. So somebody can't come and say, oh no, in the month of January I paid so much, or I only got a loan of so much, because everything will be documented. You simply go to the bank statements and be able to see that this is what has happened, and it's online and real time. So you can't even have someone tell you that, no, I've made a deposit but the money is not there. So the treasurers are able to see the accounts and be able to say, well, we've seen this money, we've got this money, and we're sending this money. So it's brought a lot of benefits to village banks and to just generally all the consumers of financial services.
And from the aspect of financial inclusion, as a bank, one of the things that we do find is that women actually are the best, have the best credit records in terms of paying and paying on their facilities, and in terms of their determination, just make sure that they make good on their loans. So to have financial inclusion extended to the women in our society is actually a good thing for the sector as a whole, because you're bringing in that advantage that helps in terms of the strength of the financial system. And we've talked about security. I remember in the old days you'd give a bus driver money to go and so that when they get to the other side, and that person has to be waiting by the bus stop to make sure he talks to the bus driver before the bus driver disappears. Those days are gone, and digitalization has clearly helped with that. As we come towards the end of our session, I wanted you to maybe just summarize for us, some of the what you think two success milestones that have been achieved in financial inclusion.
Well, I would say that the number of services, like already we're talking about the digital platforms that are available, I think that is in itself a huge success, because we are able to transact, we're able to make payments and receive money with very little, effort. That in itself is a very big success story. And if you also look at our financial literacy, I think there's more and more programs that are aimed at sensitizing and getting the public or women out there to understand what services and products that the financial sector is able to provide. I think those are some of the scores I would say you bust for 2. So I think those are the ones I would mark as being paramount for me. Yeah.
Okay. And then going back to our theme of choose to challenge. With that in mind, what challenges are you posing to the women in our society?
Don't accept the normal. You need to challenge the normal. Here it is. Look at what COVID has taught us. Yes. There are so many things that we took for granted. There are so many things that we thought needed to be done in that particular way. But here comes a virus that tells us that no, you can actually do these things differently. I look at how we are now being more and more conscious, especially when it comes to expenditure. Look at how many trips we needed. Of course, one may argue that by not traveling, you are denying one sector of the economy, like those that are in travel industry, for instance, the air and travel industry are affected because less people are flying out. But look at what it's doing to the earth. When they say when a plane takes off, the amount of carbon emission, the amount of destruction that we're doing to the earth, it's enormous. And look at how we have had so many effects on the environment. We're having floods, sometimes we are having droughts, and they're saying, oh, this is because of our lifestyle, how we have just depleted the ozone layer. So there are certain things. Earth has found its way of rebirthing, I think, by having less carbon emissions and less activities that really just disturbs the natural environment. We are seeing that we are probably now trying to rebuild it's trying to rebirth itself. So we're hoping that these challenges, when we say we choose to challenge the normal, we must look at all those things that we took for granted and start to question, because there are many ways of doing things differently. And then what I'll say to the women is aim for bigger things. Don't be content with where you are. Yeah. Just go for it. Yeah. And don't over, deliberate on an issue. Should I not? If your heart tells you that this is for you, just go for it. Yeah, just go for it.
Yeah, and I love that. Choose to challenge the norm.
Yeah.
Don't allow yourself to be boxed in what what the norm tells you should be boxed in.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you picked on you touched on the point about the environment. Just listening to the impact of 2020, it actually was just a pause button for the earth.
Yeah.
And more needs to actually be done to actually correct the path that we're on in terms of disadvantaging the planet. And on that note, thank you so much, Cecilia, for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
You've talked to us about the just your own life in terms of what you've achieved, in terms of what's happening out there, in terms of women's advancements, women coming in, being financially included, and also on your last note is refuse to be boxed and choose to challenge the norms. Thank you, viewers, for joining me on this special episode of Anakazi Online Conversations, where we're celebrating International Women's Day. The global theme this year has been Choose to Challenge, and today's conversation with Mrs. Cecilia Zimba, we talked about celebrating financial freedom for women. Join us for more Anakazi Online Conversations. Thank you, and stay safe.